before we get started, just to give you a kind of picture of the size of the artist and what they've achieved so far. Just some pretty mind-blowing statistics that Joe gave me before we came in. This is a band, unlike really any band in the world right now, who can play the main stage at Global Gathering, the main stage at the Download Rock Festival, and play a set at Passion in Ibiza tonight. They're kind of crossing lots of different genres and mean a lot to lots of different types of music fans. They're officially the second biggest UK selling band of 2012, just behind Coldplay. Their album sold over 600,000 units. They've done 2 million singles. They've had 7 records on the A-list at Radio 1. They've been nominated for a Brit for Best Band. And you know, the story goes on. So we're going to try and understand how this happened. So I think chronologically is probably the best place to start. So I'm going to turn first to Obi, and he began working with the band in 2006.
2005, 2006, around that point. We had a business called Echolocation, and it was a business that Joe and I started together because we didn't really like the jobs we were currently in, so we just decided to start something up. I was a promoter in Leeds for like 5-6 years, and while I was at university, and I stayed there. That's how Joe and I met. And we started to start this company where I would be the agent looking after all their live bookings, and Joe would look after the press and do a lot more than that, because it was at the point where a lot of the drum and bass acts, if you call it breakbeat acts, they didn't have the level of team and management they do today. So we decided we'd kind of like be another option for them and pick up all the pieces that they were missing. So Joe would be like kind of all the acts kind of semi-manager, try and plug it at radio, do the press, just do everything for them, and I'd take care of all the bookings, and was very successful. And one of the first artists we signed was Chasing Status. I remember they came into our office. I wasn't actually. It was quite amusing. I class these guys as very close friends. We've always had a very open relationship. And the first time I ever met them, I think I had a massive argument with Saul from Chasing Status about our opinions and what they thought, and it went from there. We we're sending them out as like £200-300 DJs, which would be like 10 years ago. And to obviously what is now, it's incredible to me.
So there are a couple of DJs on the scene, £200-300 a gig. Joe, what was it about them that you felt was special? Obviously, a lot of DJs were coming through your books at the time.
Firstly, obviously it was the music, but also it was the depth and the variety of the music, as you've seen with the latest album, but even back. And then it was, just within the genre, it was the hard style of drum and bass, or the vocal style of drum and bass, or tracks like Eastern Jam, dubstep. But that now today, for example, I think there's 7 radio singles with virtually all different forms of electronic music. You had, end credits was drum and bass, then Time was like old broken beat, Tinie Tempah track was hip hop, another track was dubstep. So it was right from the beginning I could see that these guys weren't one trick ponies. So it was all the different variety, and just obviously those two as individuals. They just walk into a room and you just know they're destined for big things, just because they're very hard workers. They've got incredible ear for great music, melody, and just from the second you meet those guys, they're people that you want to work with.
So Scott, you're running around records with Andy C. Again, you're seeing a lot of drum and bass artists. You know the scene. What was it that made you think I've got to get these guys on my record label?
When we signed them, they were jumping from small indie to small indie, a single on this label, a single on that label, and they just, I don't know, they looked like they had the promise to be something special. So we got them in for a meeting, and our hunches were right. They had just a great rapport with each other, and it was like we've got to sign them. And from that, we done a deal, and just thought, we've got to throw everything we can at it. as an indie, because it was at a point where we wanted to try and develop more as a label as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, from that we took it, we got, you know, new radio pluggers, new press agents, everything on board. And it was at a point when, at the label, when we first signed them, I was the only one working there. So it's like, it's all hands on deck from me, and then just kind of trying to rally a team around.
So this was an act that you felt could actually transform your label as well as...
Oh yeah, most definitely, yes.
And when you signed it, did you think that this is an act that you would have to at some point license onto a major label? That was clearly something that could happen here? Or?
It was quite apparent that was what the guys wanted to do.
Right.
And you know, that just come from the ambition that they had. I mean, it's like, okay, that's great. If we can be part of that, and you know, we can all make that happen and all be part of that team, then why not?
But to be fair, at the start, you know, when you guys first signed them, it was, I don't know, like, for me, like, I didn't truly, I think you just kind of, you live at the moment and you just work as hard as you can, you try and push things as far as you can, but I don't think you have the kind of view that this thing would potentially be at the stage where they're getting, you know, nominations for Brit Awards for Best Band at the start.
No way.
I mean, it was incredible. To us, just them being on Ram Records was a massive thing as well, because Ram Records, even though it's a small independent label, is still the best independent drum and bass label. You know, do you know what I'm saying? So I don't think any of us would have ever thought it could have, you know, have done the things, and we've seen the things and achieved the things through this band that we have, you know, the other guys have.
Another stat or fact that I just think really echoes what you two are kind of saying there was, I just remember with the first Jason Status records, like putting the vinyl in the mailer and, you know, calling up Zane Lowe and his producer and, you know, trying to get them to play it. And, you know, it's just at the time that bar kind of Ronnie sides, you know, they're just, you know, now we all know drum and bass and dubstep is, there's hardly a week goes by where it's not on a radio playlist. But, you know, just to get one evening play on anything other than the Fabio Groove Rider show, we were literally all patting ourselves on the back.
I remember the kind of bar was at the start in new music we trust, and you're like, wow, it's incredible.
Yeah, but even before that, it was just to get just evening play. But then now, to where we've got to with this music now, with, you know, Chasing the Status with the second most played act on Radio 1 last year, to so go from just trying to get a specialist nighttime play to being the second most played act. That, yeah, there's no way we ever could have imagined that.
And this was Ram's pluggers going to Radio 1 with the records.
Yeah, we teamed up with the new radio pluggers to help push this, just because we see the potential, and you know, the guys are still using them now.
Yeah, that's Eden Blackman at Ish, who definitely deserves a big mention. I mean, I don't know how many other people other than Rihanna have had 7 A-list singles at radio, and that's, you know, that's down to him and, you know, the music, obviously.
So Sonia, as the band's lawyer, when did the phone start ringing from the major labels? When was the first kind of interest registered that this is a band that could be taken to that next level?
Well, I started looking after them at the beginning of 2007, and I guess, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was probably around the end of 2007, beginning of 2008 when the phone started to call, and I guess I saw them through the transition from Ram Records over to Mercury. And I guess, Scott, it could have been a difficult situation, but I think there was a real willingness on everyone's part to actually see them get up to the next level, and see them fulfill what they wanted to do, because they were ready for it.
These guys, they just weren't your average drum and bass artists. I mean, in terms of, you know, them going to a major, I mean, Will wore boat shoes at his first meeting with me, you know. It's just like, you know, this is not your average drum and bass artist, so they were just always destined for big things.
And as we talked about before, as producers, you know, normally producers are like introverted people, and it's normally like the vocalists that are kind of these extroverts, and it all makes sense, obviously, from when you see, you know, people on stage. But these guys like sit somewhere in between where, you know, you can, you know, they could do what we're doing now, and that's what we talked about before. They could sit here and easily, you know, kind of answer all your questions, feel very comfortable and happy. And there's not many producers that I know that are like that. They're normally more, studio-based guys who have been like, while we were all running around getting drunk at, when we were kids, they're in their bedrooms messing around with like computers and gaining that knowledge. So they haven't got some of the social skills that others might have. But Chasing Status is, they're great businessmen, they're great producers, and they've got all those skills.
But they'll still spend a week working on a hi-hat
So, so the band are now on Mercury, Lauren and Michael. Now, your A&R team's brought them in, your MD signed off, and then it's handed to you guys to make it happen in the product management department and the press side. They're a drum and bass act. What are you thinking about this band when it comes across your desk?
We were really excited, obviously, because Mercury don't sign a huge amount. Well, we signed Ronnie Size actually, but this was the very marquee dance signing for us. But the key thing was really to not position it too much as a dance act, and really get the aesthetic right from the very beginning, which was all about the artwork, the videos, the photos, and how the band was presented digitally. But they came in, they didn't have that kind of, as Joe's touched on, that sort of quintessential, perhaps, typically dance feel, like bright colours and maybe abstract shapes and features. They're all about British, gritty, no frills, that kind of thing. So all the imagery was really impactful. We sort of focused on the British Bulldogs. We thought that summed them up quite well, sort of edgy, aggressive, kind of uncompromising, and sort of impactful British image with a kind of logo that wasn't too dance either. It was just kind of straight up there, yellow and black, and then all the singles kind of worked in. It had that coherent feel to them, sort of black and white with the yellow logo. And we also had to put a lot of emphasis on the videos because obviously dance acts are not necessarily going to have to Will and Saul on the artwork, not necessarily going to be a defining, sort of play a big role in the videos, and there's not many TV opportunities, so all our videos had to be talking point, kind of, not controversial, but they had to make impact. They couldn't just be a video to go with the track, and so we put a lot of emphasis and a lot of money into the videos, and I think we got a lot out of them, as we saw with Blind Faith winning the MVA award this year for Best Dance Video. End Critics won a Q Award for Best Dance Video. Best Video. And we were really happy with what happened. We kind of dealt with British themes as well. We had obviously sort of gangs in End Credits. We had rave culture in Blind Faith. We had sort of domestic violence. We had something to say in our videos, which was not often something that you get with electronic music. So we were quite proud of those.
And what were the challenges at press, Lauren?
Well, when Chasing Status signed to us, majority of the mainstream press felt like DJs or producers were relatively faceless. And that was one thing, as Mike touched on, that we were really keen to do is get some great press shots done. We wanted to keep it as, we just kept a couple of press shots for about the first few months to try and get the image of Chasing Status out to the world. It was also, they'd had some great dance press up until that point, but nothing outside of that world. And when Joe started playing us music, as Joe mentioned, there was a track that worked in the hip-hop area, there's tracks that worked in all sorts of different areas. So we knew from the beginning that Chasing Status would work in every different area of press. We knew that they'd work across the dance press, the indie press. We had like Clash writing about them. We also had the tabloids wanting to write about them, the broadsheets wanting to write about them. So it's important as well to not let those areas come in too quickly. We wanted to pace that throughout the year. And that ties into a lot of the other areas as well, but it was so important for us not to alienate any of the original dance press. We had to keep them on side, we had to keep them probably writing about Chasing Status before anyone else, and then keep them on side. We had a good year and a half until the album came out from when they signed, so we had to...
Do you think did this help, and I'd like Joe and Opie to chip in here as well, do you think it helped that this artist had not come out of house music, it had come out of drum and bass or bass? It was a little bit edgy, a little bit different.
I don't know, I think, I don't think help is a word. I mean, it's a struggle, if I'm honest. This kind of, I can't remember who, but it's stuck with me and Obi. We always fight for this music and bass music as it's known today. But the phrase that somebody used, like the bastard sons of, you know, of dance music. You know, it's like the genre. You know, for a long time. Well, I know Obi's got quite a lot to say on this, so I'm going to pass it over to you.
It's not that I've got a lot to say on it. It's just, for me, even the fact that we're up here, I see Ibiza as house music, and like from my childhood and it's run by, you know, people that their core interest is house music, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But for me, when we first started coming here and we were playing at some, you know, terrible little club, and there was no one there, and no one gave, you know, I nearly swore there, but I killed myself back then. No one cared, and now we're about to, you know, we're about to start a Tuesday night at Amnesia, one of the best clubs, you know, and it's incredible, and that's in the space of probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, the first billboard out here with a bass artist on it.
We didn't. Again, you'd never think these things are going to happen. But the thing is, sometimes it's, as well as it's more difficult to be different, sometimes it's better because people are always looking for the next big thing. Is that still working? Yeah. So I think someone cut me off. Someone into house music cut me off there. And you know, people are always looking for the next big thing. Like, you know, like right now it's the dubstep thing, and that kind of, even though you guys wouldn't necessarily realise it, that really affected drum and bass. So, you know, it went from drum and bass to dubstep. Now there's this new garage thing coming through, and you know, with like disclosures and it's not about, you know, worrying about it, and it's just about adapting. That's part of life, and I think, you know, that's why another reason why Chasing Status do so well, because when you had all these like old guard drum and bass guys, they're going, oh, I hate dubstep. Chasing Status embraced it and brought out probably the 2 biggest ever dubstep tunes, and that's, you know, and that's a big part of their success. And you know, I think, you know, I'm talking to the guys now, and Joe is obviously about what they're doing next, you know, and they're completely aware and they're of the moment, and you know, they make music they like.
And they take risks.
But they're very current and they take risks. I mean, they tried to, one of the signings they tried to make on MTA was Disclosure. They didn't get them, they were very close to getting them, but that just tells you kind of the mindset of those guys, is that they're forward thinking, and they know it's not, you know, if you are going to be that guy who sits there and just goes and just looks at everyone else and goes, oh, my stuff's better, and you know, that music, and you just be a bit of a hater, you will have a shelf life. You will, and you'll just become old, and no one will care, and you'll be, you know, and you'll go backwards. But if you embrace things, you'll always succeed, I think.
And that, you know, that's a good point, because while the guys have signed to Mercury and the pressure's on, they've got to make the records. At the same time, Sophie, they've started their own label and are actually at A&R in New Talent.
Yeah, they basically knew Nero from kind of the drum and bass and dubstep like DJ scene, and Nero were talking to some other independent labels, and Will and Saul kind of swooped in and just said, actually, why don't you sign to our label? And it was called Dub Trade originally. They didn't actually have a label set up at the time, so they managed to do that fairly quickly without Nero knowing, set up MTA Records before Nero had actually signed it. So that happened in 2009, and I think it's given them a really strong understanding of the industry and how, you know, from the other side, not being artists, and just going on from what Obi was saying about how, you know, they've always led from the front, and they've always wanted to be, you know, at the forefront of what they're doing and setting the trends. Their A&Ring for MTA is one of the reasons why we've had such a successful first few years. Nero had #1 album and #1 single. We've signed 6 other acts that are all in development and all doing very well. And it's from Will and Saul's hunger and capacity to lead from the front.
Yeah, and to go on from that, if you just look at all the features on their album, you know, they made a lot of those decisions and made a lot of those songs with Maverick Sabre, with Delilah, you know, with Liam Bailey, all these, before those people ever had a song out. So they weren't jumping on any bandwagon. They were looking at people's abilities and making a decision. You know what, that guy's great. You know, she's incredible, and they made like great songs with them. And they look at it, you know, now, you know, if you look at that album, Tinie Tempah, you know, Delilah, Maverick Sabre, you know, it goes Plan B. It's like it's a who's who of who's hot now. So, you know, that again, it tells you why they're successful.
So far, so amazing. We know they're talented, great artists, brilliant indie label plan. Sign it to a major. The major, you know, gives it the welly that majors can do. But along this journey, Joe, there must have been some trying times, surely.
Yes. Obi reminded me about an hour ago, and you in terms of with the tipping point. Well, I think the tipping point was definitely a song called Blind Faith, and God, I've never actually thought of Blind Faith. We needed some definitely, and that was just one of those songs where they just went to hell and back making it, and I just think with a lot of artists. Put in positions is how can you deal with pressure and under pressure, how well do you do? And they really went to hell and back with that single, and they learned a lot about themselves and what they wanted to be. And as me as a manager as well, that was a time where I had to be really strong as a manager and just really honest with my opinions. Am I still with you? Yeah. Really honest in my opinions, and but that song we tried loads of different songs over it. We had this amazing, like lots of people, anyone working with dance music will have this happen where you have an amazing backing track, but then it warrants a song nowadays. You need that song on top of it to go to the heights where Chase and Status wanted to go to. And we had these great songs written over it, but they didn't feel like Chase and Status, or it was too pop or had gone too far. And then literally at the point where virtually everyone was ready to move on to one of the other singles, we found an artist called Liam Bailey, who's just an incredibly talented songwriter, and put him in the studio with the guys. And at this point, this is a point where you're not sleeping for 3 days. They're literally just awake, working. And that's another, just the work ethic of these guys is incredible. And I remember them sending the demo down, and it was just one bit of vocal, probably about 8 bars over, which ended up being the verse. And just from hearing that, I knew we had it. And if you ask me how do I know it was a hit song out of 8 bars of verse, you just did. Obi, I think you got sent that 8 bars as well, and you could recall that.
And I was one of the people saying, move on, like, it's done, you can't make this song work, just move on, because you have to finish. And I admit that. And but when we got sent that Liam Bailey song, it was straight away we all knew that is massive. That is, it's not just because that song is. I think it's so important as well, and I think it will go down as a really important song in terms of it was like massively nostalgic, but at the same time just being completely up to date and of the time with the whole dubstep thing, and it's just the way they managed to blend all those things together just made it a massively powerful tune. You always have that thing of with dubstep, it's like some people will be like, the older generation will be like they don't quite get it, or this, or it's young people's music. But with that song, it was like universal. I've never heard anyone say they dislike that song.
It was funny. Another funny story about that song was so obviously it had the old rave samples on the drop, which and that was out of respect to that old era that that was obviously the guys were really influenced by. And I remember when we made the music video with an incredibly talented director. I've never worked with a director where you just feel like this guy is just going to be a living legend, and this music video when we made it, and I knew it was special, but I remember the day that we put it up online, and YouTube actually banned it though, but still people managed to see it in other ways. And I remember I had a few people like Mike Pickering and Nick Raphael call me up and go, that shit was fucking emotional, Joe. You know, that really took me back, mate. You know, like, and so many people thought that was old footage. You know, we bothered to film all of that meticulously. I think someone caught us out. We got the Sega Dream Drive or whatever it was called was 1 year wrong, but other than that, I think we were spot on with it. And
journalists as well. There was, I think it was a trending topic on Twitter that day that the video went live, because all these journalists were saying it was making them relive their youth, and like there was just such a buzz that day from that one video.
Yeah, just that song, it just, in so many ways, because like you touched on that, it just, a generation of people as well, I think, that looked at drum and bass or dubstep as noisy, it opened it up to a whole load of people, and for me, just, I'll never forget when that song, and two points I want to make actually, just one, just going back to the fact of when you have an amazing instrumental track and you're trying to put a vocal on it, I can just say from experience that now I can say that, you know, you can go to hell and back, and you know you can make it work. You know, we really did go to hell and back, but you know, an amazing thing came out of it, and I'm glad we didn't move on to another track. But then another thing is just in terms of when you're at this point of, you know, whether you're going to be an underground artist or whether with Will and Saul and his boat shoes you want to be more than that, you know, then you do have to take risks. And at the time, previously, they'd always tested their music purely by their club DJ sets, which is, you know, going out 1,000 people, you know, purist drum and bass people. And then, to be honest, you know, the big drop is all that people are, you know, that's what they want, is that drop and how exciting the drop is. And then here we had to go with a whole different skill set, and just, it was a feeling, it was more than just the drop, it was what the song meant, and Liam's lyrics, it meant so more things than just the intensity of the drop. And for me, when the guys performed on the second stage in pouring rain at Glastonbury, you know, that was another real moment for me, just as a manager, to realise that, you know, with dance music, it can mean a lot more than just, you know, that drop, you know, or that loop, you know, this song, you know, Glastonbury, and that kind of reaction. So now I say to my guys, look, you know, there are songs you make, of course you still make songs, like there's still no problem, it's played by every single drum and bass DJ, opens with it, and it's just pure carnage. But then also, you know, make those songs that people are going to sing back to you at festivals in the pouring rain.
Great stuff, Joe. I mean, a lot of pointers for the people out there. Mercury, people, you see a lot of artists through the doors. You know, what makes Chasing Status special? How does it work? How do they interact with the label people?
It always felt to me like it was a big family. Like Joe was always very good at bringing, like him and Obi were in the office all the time. Will and Saul would come in very often. It felt like everyone knew Will and Saul inside out. Everyone knew exactly what they did and didn't like. So we could all work together and make sure, ultimately everyone knew everyone was on the same page in the label.
They're good at forming relationships. You know, we got close to them pretty quickly. And one thing they did, which I should do with more artists, because we had a little bit of time actually before the record came out, but they sent us a scrapbook of sort of likes and dislikes, you know, just from anything to press ads to clothes to pictures of old reggae sound systems, do you know what I mean? So we got a real flavour and vibe of what this was about, which was really nice actually. It's something which would inform the artwork and inform the videos, and it's not something we actually do very often with other acts, but that was really, really helpful actually from the start.
And the other great thing about them is they are opinionated. A lot of artists come to the label and they don't really have much to say, or not quite sure what their vision is. And with Will and Saul, they always had a clear idea of where they wanted to go, what they wanted to do, how they wanted to be portrayed, the kind of press that they wanted to do. So they always had strong opinions and were always happy to work with us on them.
Can I just add, in terms of Mercury, I think the fact that I think with all my artists now, the first album has been on an independent label, and you know we've managed to get them to about 100,000 records with an independent. We managed to get them, say, on the radio before signing with a major. So I think by the time we took our first step into a major, we already knew who we were. We already knew who we wanted to be. And I think when you go in with that confidence and you're not saying to the major, hey, you know, I'm not sure who I want to be. I'm not sure what I want my artwork to be. I think if you go in knowing, then I think they're much more open to listening and actioning that. So I just think Mercury have just been brilliant at, you know, fulfilling what the guys have wanted to do and be.
Going on for that, what Joe just said as well about Mercury, because you know they are very inclusive of, you know, like as an agent, it was one that I do it a lot more now. But you know, you're invited to every planning meeting. You know, you're constantly talking to the label there, and it's just that kind of team mentality, not this, you know, division tier. You know, you're seen as this, and we do this, and you're responsible. You know, everyone's opinions are heard. I think the other good thing what Mercury have done for what I see other major labels mistakes they've made is you know, they don't try and dictate anything music-wise into the acts. It's, you know, they understand that this isn't normal, you know, pop music. You know, these guys, you can't really A&R chasing status from a major record label. It's just not going to work. And I don't, you know, from what I see, you know, in the industry is that is different in other places, and I think probably a core reason why Mercury is having big success with dance music and others are not, because there's, you know, people trying to get involved with, you know, you can't, you know, there's going to come a time where, you know, Joe, everyone on this panel, we're not going to become connected with the stuff that the kids are doing. And because it's just, that's inevitable when you just get older, that's what happens. And when I'm 50 years old, I'm not going to be trying to tell an 18-year-old how to make a song, like from the music he goes out and plays with every day. And I think that's the other thing, you know, Mercury have been really good at, is just let the artist be the artist, and you know, and basically help them develop in other places and be supportive.
And has the live side gone hand in hand with how Mercury developed them to this level, do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Obi, to be honest, I'll take a minute to just big up Obi Asika here if I can. I mean, to like take this, how you take DJs from £200 DJs to, well, I went 6-figure live shows, headlining festivals all around the world, you know, in such a short space of time, with a music that, you know, isn't pop music, that's, you know, very different, you know, and we just had to, you know, he's fought tooth and nail and just made people understand.
Cheers for that, Joe.
It's true though.
You know, but it's all, you know, we're not gonna, yeah. But I can pat him on the back like endlessly as well, because he's great as what he does as well. But this is the thing is as well, is the other thing is that was really great, and really great about the way Chasing Status think is, I'm telling you, a lot of those tours that we were doing, even though they were selling out, those guys were just pushing everything back in them to make the show better, make the show bigger. They were doing, you know, the shows Joe and the guys were putting together in small venues. It was like they're spending the money that people were spending in arenas sometimes. And it was just that kind of, investment that we're using, obviously DJ money, using like Mercury helping out with tour support and stuff like that. And it's like they're selling out shows and they're still pumping everything back into it, to the point now, you know, they're on the verge of, you know, the next step is arenas, and it's, you know, and that's completely viable and will happen. And I think that other thing, some of the acts that I talk to that are on, that, you know, that I know that kind of, you know, that are part of the scene as well. It's just like there's no long-term plan. It's just all, I don't want to do that because I'm going to lose loads of money, and that doesn't make any sense. And then they'll do some rubbish show that no one cares about, and then they'll never do a show again. And it's always got to be that, you know, it's always got to be for the long term, what we're doing next, how we're going to keep this moving. I mean, we're talking a lot, I'm talking too much there, but we're talking a lot. I went to a show the other day, it's like Watch the Throne shop tour with Jay-Z and Kanye. And that is just like, I found that so inspirational. Not just in a way, the show was incredible, the music was incredible, obviously the two acts are incredible, and it just shows you that that's the bar, you know, that is the bar. It's like, and you just know, you just got to keep it moving, and anything's possible. Because if you said that we were doing a panel here talking about chasing status success in Ibiza, where I just see as like a house music stronghold, you told me that 5 years ago, I'd have said, yeah, whatever, mate. You know, so it's the possibilities are endless, I think.
But just to touch on with quite interesting difference between, say, house music, I think, and bass music. We did almost to compete with the superstar house DJ. We felt we had to build one hell of a show. You know, we wanted to give, you know, the James Bartons of this world, and you know, when they book the act, that we're not just going to turn up with our SD cards and pick up the check. You know, we really turned up with a hell of a lot of production. And looking in hindsight now, I just kind of
I do like house music, by the way.
Yeah, no, but I remember in hindsight, I remember when we turned up at like 500, 400 capacity venues like the Plymouth Hippo or something, and just everyone in the venue who worked there was just taking photos of our production. You know, I was like, you know, that's when you know you're like putting on a show. You know, just we really did spend a lot of money to put on a show and yeah, blow people's minds really.
I also remember that when they signed to us, Joe and Obi kept saying, if anyone's not sure about them or if anyone's sitting on the fence, bring them to a live show. And they were right, because everyone that was a little bit like, not sure, are they just kind of DJs or are they just producers? As soon as they came to a live show, like, everyone changed their minds, everyone wanted to write about them. Like, for example, as I mentioned earlier, we did a piece with Q magazine and they did one of the Q awards shows, and most of the people there, including the Q editor at the time, said it was the best show he's ever had, that he's been doing for the last 10 years. So when people come see them live, it totally blew people away.
Yeah, for me it's a massive defining point in the whole campaign. It was so good live that we created a TV programme for Channel 4 at their HMV Forum show. I did like a 5-camera shoot with a jib and packaged up in 23 minutes, got broadcast live on Channel 4 and repeated about 4 times before the album, sort of showing everyone just how good they were live. And throughout the marketing, I mean, the TV ad used a little bit of the videos, but it was mainly live, and it just got through that. It got across that culture, that you know, almost kind of new punk feel, that kids just going absolutely crazy. Like, you know, it felt amazing. It felt bigger than just lots of, you know, dance music stuck together. It was a movement. It was huge.
I think we're pretty much running out of time here, so I think I'll turn to Joe as the manager of the artist and say, Joe, for you and the artist, what's next?
To continue to take risks and not to make No More Idols version 2. You know, we could probably do that in a month. You know, just go and get a load of more UK featured vocalists and just do what we did. But you know, from the music I'm hearing in the studio with the guys, I've really taken any pressure off them. They put pressure on themselves, but right now I just want them to be as creative as possible. All the music I'm hearing I've never heard before, and so it's just about continuing to be, you know, revolutionaries and, you know, trendsetters, and not copying just what, you know, what seems to be working.
And for you, Mercury, what are you looking for this next record?
We'd like it delivered, please. This year, yeah, it's more of the same. I mean, yeah, ideally, if we could have it this year, sell platinum this year, and then go on to sell 1 million next year in total. I mean, the sky's the limit now with double platinum with this one. We've got to be looking at triple platinum, 1 million with the next record.
Right.
For me, like, I caught some of James Barton's interview, and for me, I think it's important for our genre to have some events that people connected and people kind of that's their core interest own. That's a big thing for me for the next 18 months. Because these are the big, great times, but there's going to be bad times, and the only way you get through those is by if you own things. And I think, you know, like what James was saying, look, it's great now, but 8 years ago we didn't know what the hell was going on, and that's why, you know, when I look at something like Global Gathering, Chase the Status is headliner, Tinie's a headliner, Skrillex as a headliner, but that's a house music festival, so it's getting through the hard times for whatever, and then as soon as there's another house name, they'll be straight back in there. But I think we're in, my fear is there might be a danger one time where we're not hot, and then where's our place if there's not people in control and power that are fans of what we do. So that for me is a big thing for our genre.
I think a huge example then what Obi's touching on is this Ibiza Amnesia show. I mean, previously, we've been very fortunate to be booked by, like Carl Cox and Friends, and they booked, Pendulum, Subfocus, Chase and Six to perform at nights with Carl, which has been great. But for the first time for us on this island to just, take over Amnesia just with this type of music and pull that together. So hopefully in the same way that house music can exist in Ibiza and exist around the world, regardless of whether it's getting loads of play and the second most played act on Radio 1, I think what Obi's saying is even when this dubstep movement or this bass movement isn't the talk of the town and the airwaves, that there's still really solid foundations to continue building on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you to the panel. I think we're out of time, but I think we've got maybe, Ben, time for a couple of questions from the audience, if anyone's got any.
Hi, question for Sophie and Sonia, really. I just wonder whether you take any percentage of your artists' live income on the MTA side?
It depends what level of artist we're signing. It's not a necessity, but we obviously have to move in the way that many labels are moving. And obviously, everyone knows about the decline of sales, and ancillaries is a way for small labels to make an income. But no, not necessarily. In some cases, yes.
Standard deal. Thanks.
Any more? If there isn't any, I've got one more question to the panel, because I know it's been a big feature of today, and I think the panel after us is going to talk a lot about social media. How important has social media been in getting Chase and Status to the level they're at? And I think I'll put that one to Lauren.
The Saul from Chase and Status runs the Twitter himself. They work very closely with the digital department at Mercury to kind of always stay on top of the different social media. I think Joe can probably...
I think it comes quite naturally to Saul, which is important because you have forced communication on social networking, it just doesn't work at all. He's quite kind of chatty, opinionated, no sales messages until the day the record's out. So it's built up followers naturally, and same thing on Facebook. And they're also very... they were up for...
He makes a point of he'll just post the link without saying what it is or tell people to buy it. That's as far as we can ever get him to go.
Yeah, but I think that they were always into kind of new ideas with it. They were kind of digitally minded up. We did the first ever official video using Facebook Connect, which basically was the first music video to put the Facebook user, into the music video by taking your username. And your user photo. I don't know if any of you saw it. It was basically in the Let You Go video, the Patrick Chase show, your name pops up on the iPhone. So we filmed the iPhone, green screened it, and then did this whole Facebook app, which the guys were very much involved in. So yeah, I think social media was huge for us.
Also, if you look at the people that, I think these sort of artists and this sort of genre has always been at the forefront. Like, we look at like websites like UKF, and before that Drum and Bass Arena, and even the guys Luke and Mark from the audience, I know them as promoters, and that would pretty much book all the acts, that we're Chasing Status, the Pendulums, the Neros. So I think this, this genre has always been at the forefront of that.
So rather than just Chasing Status and their social networks, I think it's about, they've been fortunate enough to tap into other huge social networks like the UKFs and the Drum and Bass Arenas of this world. There are MTV, there are Capital FM, in terms of, the reach and the figures and the audience, and internationally as well.
think our time is up. So, yeah.
It is. On your bike. Thank you very much. Round of applause.